Did the Dow Jones just lock in its major 40-week cycle low? Welcome back to Trading Market Cycles. I record this video on Thursday, August 20th. Today, we are breaking down the exact mathematical rhythms of the market, from the crucial 40-week wave down to the 40-day trend. If you want to know whether a massive rally is coming, or if a sharp correction is hiding just around the corner, you are in the exact right place. Let's dive right into the charts. Before we dive into the cycles, please take a moment to review the financial disclaimer on your screen. This analysis is for educational purposes only. Let's start with the 40-week cycle. My last update was right here on the week of August 3rd, 2026. During this update, I mentioned that if the last 40-week cycle low truly formed during the third week of November 2025, then we have an expectation for the next 40-week cycle low to form in the middle of August. On July 29th, the Dow Jones Industrial Average formed a 51,547 low. This low occurred 35 weeks after the November 2025 low. Is July low the expected 40-week cycle low? A 35-week duration since the last 40-week cycle for a 40-week cycle is only 4.5 weeks shorter than the standard 40-week length on the Hurst nominal model. Indeed, since a low occurred after crossing below the 40-week VTL and FLD, there is a very high probability the March low was indeed the 40-week low. Crossing back above its cycle line during the first week of April usually confirms that the previous low was at least a 40-week cycle low. If this analysis is correct, this low will also serve as the 18-month low expected between August and September. During the same update, I mentioned the possibility of a misplacement of the first 40-week cycle low since the major April 2025 low. Instead of being in November 2025, the most probable alternative date was in March 2026, which would project the next low into November 2026. This possibility remains valid, but it is very unlikely because it would make the 40-week cycle 51 weeks long, which is exceptionally long, though not entirely impossible. For now, my primary scenario, stating that the 40-week cycle low has already formed, remains my favorite and most probable outlook. For short-term traders, knowing whether the 40-week cycle has formed or is still to come is not primordial, since we use FLD crossovers to enter or exit trades. However, knowing where the 40-week cycle formed provides vital insight into the strength of the next move. If you are finding clarity in these cycle breakdowns, take a second right now to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a critical market turning point. Let's look now at the 20-week cycle. During the same update, the 20-week cycle clarified the situation. Indeed, by using the Hurst synchronicity rule, we were able to identify with certitude the 20-week cycle low position in March 2026. We obtained a second confirmation of this low formation when the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed above its cycle line, or FLD, at 49,497, providing 53,937 as a potential upside target. With a new all-time high of 54,749, the Dow Jones Industrial Average met and exceeded this target. At the time of the last publication, the high was off by 643 points below the target. Since the last 20-week low in November 2026, exactly 18 weeks have passed, just 1.5 weeks shorter than the 19.5-week average length on the Hurst nominal model. Thus, with a very high degree of confidence, we can label the March 2026 low as a 20-week cycle. Since from the March 2026 to the July 29th, there is 17 weeks difference, there is a very high probability the July 29th is also a 20-week cycle low. What is next for the 20-week cycle? We have to monitor the Dow Jones Industrial Average's reaction when it approaches its FLD during the formation of the next 20-week low. In a balanced market, the Dow Jones should cross below its FLD, providing a downside target. This will be the second 20-week cycle since the March low, and per the rule of synchronicity, it will also coincide with a 40-week cycle low. In this case, we can expect the Dow Jones Industrial Average, after crossing below its 20-week FLD, to decline and find support on its 40-week FLD. In the event that the 18-month cycle low is still ahead of us, the Dow Jones must also cross below its 20-week FLD. Therefore, in both scenarios, we can expect a correction. To trade the current 20-week cycle, traders should build a roadmap using the 40-day FLD. Since the Dow Jones crossed above its FLD, we know the market should trend upward for a few weeks. The next 20-week cycle low is expected during the second week of November, and the peak can be expected between the 3rd and last week of September. When the 20-week cycle low was confirmed, I drew the 20-week VTL from the March low to the July low. This VTL is a very important tool as it will give us an early signal when the potential 40-week cycle peak has formed or is forming. Now let's examine the 80-day cycle. If the July 29th low was a 20-week low, and according to the Hurst rule of synchronicity, this low was also an 80-day low. Using the Hurst 80-day cycle average length from the nominal model, which is 68 days, we can expect the next cycle low to form on October 5th, 2026. The next 80-day low should form below its 80-day FLD, providing a potential downside target. The peak can be expected around September 1st. The July 29th 80-day cycle lasted 49 days, which is very short for an 80-day cycle. Lately, it seems the cycles are running shorter, which is typical in a bull market. Remember, the 80-day average length on the Hurst nominal model is 68 days. How do we find out if the 80-day low is already in place or still to come by the end of this month? We have to build a roadmap with a 20-day FLD. I will cover that during the 20-day cycle analysis. When the next 80-day cycle low has formed and confirmed, I will draw the 80-day cycle VTL, valid trend line. When the Dow Jones Industrial Average crosses below it, according to Hurst's rules, this will confirm that the 80-day peak has formed, and more importantly, that the next 20-week cycle peak is established. This information will be vital to gauge the severity of the next correction. Furthermore, where the peak of the next 80-day cycle forms relative to the crest of the cycle is extremely important. Hurst calls this time translation. If we have a left-hand time translation, meaning the peak occurs on the left side of the cycle, we can expect a sharp correction. Conversely, if we have a right translation, where the peak occurs on the right side of the cycle after the crest, we can anticipate a moderate correction. This will be invaluable information. Let us now move on to the next lower cycle, the 40-day cycle. From the July 29th low up to Thursday, August 20th, only 22 days have elapsed. We need about 12 more days to complete this 40-day cycle, which is expected to form on September 1st. The last trading signal for the 40-day cycle occurred on August 4th, when the Dow Jones Industrial Average crossed above its FLD at 52,969, providing a 54,391 potential upside target. The next day, the Dow Jones Industrial Average reached a new all-time high of 54,749, meeting and slightly exceeding its upside target. Since making this all-time high, the Dow Jones has started its correction on its way to its 40-day cycle low. If this is the first 40-day cycle since the July 20-week cycle, then we can expect the Dow Jones to find support on its FLD, which will be around 52,000 to 53,000. If the Dow Jones drops sharply and decisively below its cycle line, this could be bearish for the ensuing trend and elevate the possibility that the 18-month cycle low is still ahead of us. Remember, originally, the 18-month cycle low was expected to form between August and September. In conclusion, markets move in predictable rhythms, but only for those equipped to read them. Make sure to apply these roadmap guidelines to your own trading strategy this week. If you want access to even more detailed, shorter time cycle analyses, scan the QR code on the screen, hit the like button, subscribe, check the description box below, or stay tuned for our next update. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Trade safe.